As a physician with nearly 3 decades of experience, I've seen firsthand just how powerful our own biology can be. I want to share some really critical new research with you today, something that could fundamentally change how you think about your health. So let's start with a study from UC San Diego back in 2016. Researchers followed over 2,400 women with early stage breast cancer for more than 7 years. And what they found was, well, one factor predicted recurrence above almost everything else. It wasn't a new drug, it wasn't a specific gene, it was, of all things, an eating pattern. Here it is. The study discovered that women who fasted for fewer than 13 hours overnight had a 36% higher risk of their breast cancer returning. Now get this. The average woman in that study was 52 years old. A 36% difference, just from the amount of time between dinner and breakfast. Now, if that number made you think twice about that late night snack, I want you to stay with me here. Because this isn't some fringe science. We're talking about research published in top-tier journals, JAMA Oncology, Cell, Nature, and it's funded by the National Cancer Institute. This is about core biological mechanisms your body is using every single day. Okay, so let's dive right into the first mechanism. It's all about fuel. And it turns out that our healthy cells and most cancer cells, well, they run on very different kinds of engines. Here's a great way to picture it. Your healthy cells are like those new hybrid cars. They're incredibly flexible. They can run on glucose, sure, but when sugar is scarce, they just switch over to another fuel source, ketones. No problem. But a lot of cancer cells, they're like old gas guzzlers. We've actually known since 1924 that they are metabolically locked. They're completely dependent on a constant supply of glucose to run. So you can see what happens, right? When you fast, your blood glucose levels naturally drop. Your healthy cells just adapt and switch over to ketones. But many of those gas-guzzling cancer cells, they can stall out. They get stressed and become more vulnerable. Now, let me be crystal clear. This does not mean fasting cures cancer. What it means is that it creates an environment inside your body that is far less friendly to cancer's growth. All right, on to the second key process. This one is about your body's own cellular maintenance program. Think of it like a dedicated cleanup crew. It's an absolutely essential function that, unfortunately, starts to slow down quite a bit after we turn 50. The process is called autophagy, which literally means self-eating. And that's exactly what it is. It's your body's internal quality control. It's cleanup and recycling crew. It goes around, finds damaged or dysfunctional parts inside your cells, things that could otherwise turn into serious problems, and it clears them out to make way for new, healthy components. And this timeline shows you exactly how to get that crew working. See, for the first 12 hours or so after a meal, your body is just busy burning through the glucose from that food. But once you push past that 12 to 16 hour mark, that's when you reliably flip the switch and reactivate this essential process, allowing for some really deep cellular renewal. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Even a tiny snack, a handful of almonds at 11 p.m., is enough to shut the whole process down and completely restart your metabolic clock. The only things that won't interfere are water, black coffee, or plain herbal tea. They keep that cleanup crew on the job. Okay, the third mechanism. This one involves a very powerful growth hormone called insulin-like growth factor 1, or IGF-1 for short. It's vital when we're young and growing, but in excess after age 50, it can end up feeding the very cells we don't want to grow. A landmark study in the journal Cell Metabolism from 2014 was, well, it was stunning. It found that for adults between the ages of 50 and 65, a diet high in animal protein was linked to a 74% increase in cancer mortality. A 74% increase. And the primary driver for that risk? Elevated levels of IGF-1. Now, it is absolutely crucial to understand this next part. This risk is very specific to that age window, from 50 to 65. After age 65, the data shows the complete opposite. Age-related muscle loss becomes a much bigger threat, and getting enough protein actually becomes critical for your health. So, all this science is fascinating, right? But how does it actually translate to a real person? Well, let me tell you about one of my patients. We'll call her Margaret. Margaret was 54, and she had a strong family history of breast cancer. She came to my office with elevated metabolic markers, like high fasting insulin, and honestly, she just felt helpless, like she was a bystander just waiting for bad news to arrive. So we put a plan together. After just 3 months of consistent 16-hour daily fasts and a couple of cycles of a fasting mimicking diet, her labs changed dramatically. Her IGF-1 dropped all the way from 240 down to 178. Her blood sugar markers improved too. She was no longer just waiting. She was actively changing her own biology. And Margaret's story isn't an outlier. A big review of 24 different studies found something really telling. When cancer patients actually understand the mechanism, when they get the why behind the practice, their adherence to fasting protocols is remarkably high. We're talking between 67 and 98%.
So, the big question is, what can you do with this information? What can you start tonight?
You can start with that simple 13-hour fast, the one from that original JAMA oncology study. It's so simple. Finish dinner by 7 p.m., close the kitchen for the night, and then just don't eat again until 8 the next morning. It's free, it requires no special foods, it just lets your own biology do its essential work.
But before you begin anything, it is absolutely essential that you understand who should not be attempting this without medical supervision and what warning signs to watch out for.
Please listen to me very carefully on this. If any of the conditions you see here apply to you, if you have type 1 diabetes, if you're on insulin or other specific medications, if you're in active chemo, have a very low BMI, or a history of an eating disorder, you should not attempt extended fasting without talking directly with your doctor. The risks are real, and this has to be managed professionally. And these are non-negotiable alarm bells. If you experience any of them while fasting, fainting, heart palpitations, confusion, you must stop immediately and speak with your physician. Your safety has to be the #1 priority. Look, the research here isn't complete. The massive long-term trials that will give us the final definitive answers, they're still underway. But the evidence we have right now is serious. It's peer-reviewed and it's credible. And it asks a really powerful question that I think we should all be considering. You deserve to understand this information fully, not as a magic cure for cancer and certainly not as a replacement for your mammograms or colonoscopies. Think of it as a powerful, evidence-based tool that you can use to actively support your body's own incredible health systems. And you can start tonight.
Today, we're going to talk about one of the most important and frankly most overlooked factors in cancer biology, your gut. Now, your doctor probably checks your cholesterol, right? But they almost certainly don't look at this. And as you're about to see, the evidence is piling up that they absolutely should. Okay, let's get right into it. First things first, I want you to completely rethink what your body is. You have right now about 38 trillion bacteria living inside you. To put that in perspective, that's more than the number of your own human cells. This isn't just a random piece of trivia, it's a fundamental truth about our biology that modern medicine is really only just starting to wrap its head around.
You know, for most of the last century, the medical world pretty much saw these bacteria as, well, just passive little passengers, kind of just hanging out, maybe helping us digest some fiber. But that view, it's been completely blown out of the water. We now know the gut microbiome is this incredibly active, dynamic system. It's constantly talking to your immune system, your brain, and most importantly for our conversation today, it's deeply involved in the processes that can either promote or prevent cancer.
So how exactly does this second genome inside of us have so much influence? We're going to walk through 3 specific, kind of hidden pathways. And really understanding these is what makes the practical steps we'll talk about later feel so logical and powerful.
Okay, the first pathway is all about your immune system. See, your gut isn't just a tube for food. It's basically the Pentagon for your body's defense force. This system, called the gut-associated lymphoid tissue, or GALT for short, is home to about 70% of all your immune cells. That's a staggering number, and it really shows you just how central the gut is to keeping you safe. So what happens when your gut bacteria get thrown out of whack? Well, the whole system starts to falter. The good guys decline, and the actual lining of your gut can become leaky. This allows these little fragments of bad bacteria, called liposaccharides, or LPS, to slip into your bloodstream. Your body sees these and goes on high alert, triggering this chronic low-grade inflammation. It's not the kind you feel when you twist your ankle. It's this silent, simmering fire that creates what scientists call a cancer-permissive immune environment. Basically, it's a place where cancer cells can hide out and grow without being noticed.
And here's a really critical point, especially for anyone over 50. Our gut diversity naturally tends to drop as we get older, particularly if we're eating a standard Western diet. The protective species start to disappear, and the more inflammatory ones start to take over, all fueled by years of low fiber, stress, and maybe a few rounds of antibiotics along the way. All right, on to the second pathway. This one involves these amazing molecules called short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs. When your good gut bacteria get the fiber they love to eat, they produce these compounds as a thank you gift. And the real rock star of the group, especially for cancer prevention, is a substance called butyrate. Butyrate is just fascinating. It's the main source of energy for the cells that line your colon, keeping that wall strong and healthy. But here's where it gets wild. Inside cancer cells, it does something totally different. It acts like a set of epigenetic brakes. It literally goes into the cancer cell and flips the switch on genes that are designed to suppress tumors. It tells cancer cells point blank to stop growing. So, the magic ingredient for making this cancer-fighting butyrate is fiber. But here's the problem. We have a massive deficit. The average American is getting about 15 grams of fiber a day when the recommendation is more than double that, over 30 grams. We are literally starving the very bacteria that make these protective compounds for us.
Okay, pathway number 3. This is especially important when we talk about hormone-sensitive cancers, like breast cancer. It involves a specific crew of gut microbes called the estrobolome, and their main job is to help your body manage and get rid of estrogen properly.
Now, when your gut is out of balance, a state called dysbiosis, certain bad bacteria start to overproduce an enzyme. And what this enzyme does is it essentially finds estrogen that your body has already marked for disposal, and it reactivates it. So this used estrogen gets reabsorbed back into your system, raising your overall estrogen levels, and with it, the potential risk for these hormone-driven cancers. It's like your gut's recycling program has gone completely haywire.
Okay, so we've laid out the problem, and it might sound a little daunting, but here's the really hopeful part. The solution isn't some futuristic, high-tech drug. It's actually an ancient practice. Let's look at how something as simple as fasting can start to fundamentally rewire this entire system. This isn't about restriction, it's about restoration. The evidence on this is just so compelling. Even a simple 16-hour fast, we're basically talking about finishing dinner a bit earlier and having a later breakfast, has been shown to significantly boost a key bacterium called Akkermansia mucinifila. This little guy is a superstar when it comes to keeping your gut barrier strong and sealed tight, which helps prevent that inflammatory LPS leakage we were just talking about. And when you stop and think about it, this makes perfect evolutionary sense. I mean, for almost all of human history, we didn't eat 3 meals and snacks every single day. Food was intermittent. This modern world of constant eating is a very, very new thing that our gut bacteria just haven't had time to adapt to. So fasting, it's really just a way of returning our gut to the natural rhythm it evolved with.
Now for the most important part. How do we turn all this science into action? Because understanding the how is great, but without a what to do, it's just biology trivia. So let's build a practical toolkit with concrete steps you can take and key markers you can actually track. Let me tell you about a 61-year-old man named David. He had precancerous polyps, all the signs of poor gut health. He made just 2 fundamental changes. He started that 16-hour daily fast, and he got serious about boosting his fiber intake to 35 grams a day. 12 months later, he went in for his follow-up colonoscopy, and they found no new polyps. His story just perfectly shows how all these pathways come together to create real, tangible results. So let's talk about that fiber goal. 30 to 35 grams a day. This does not have to be complicated or expensive. We're talking about simple things: frozen veggies, canned beans, oats. The key is building simple habits, like just making sure you add vegetables to 2 of your meals each day. Now, one quick but important warning. If you have digestive issues like IBS, you have to increase your fiber intake slowly. Let your system get used to it. And the best part is, you don't have to guess if this is working. There are specific markers you can talk to your doctor about. High-sensitivity C-reactive protein, or HSCRP, is a great test for that chronic inflammation we talked about. You want to see that number below 1.0. You can even get a gut test to establish a baseline and see where key bacteria like Akkermansia stand.
So we've covered the science that connects your gut to your cancer risk. And we've walked through the tools to put you back in the driver's seat. It's so important to remember these are not separate things. It's all one interconnected system. A simple fasting window is a powerful lever that moves multiple pieces all at once. The tools are here, they're accessible, and they're backed by science. The only question left is, what's the one small change you can start with today?
All right, let's get right into it. We're talking about a really common mistake that a ton of people over 50 are making with their protein. And the crazy part is, it comes from following advice that sounds perfectly healthy, but just wasn't designed for their bodies at this stage of life.
I want to kick this off with a number that honestly, it just completely stopped me in my tracks. A huge study found that if you're between 50 and 65, eating a high animal protein diet was linked to get this, a 74% increase in the risk of dying from cancer. I mean, that's not a small number. That is massive.
So think about it. If you're in that age range and you're doing all the right things, grilled chicken for dinner, Greek yogurt for breakfast, maybe a protein shake after a workout, this could be a massive blind spot. Which leads to a pretty uncomfortable question, right? Could the very diet you think is healthy actually be part of the problem? Okay, so how is that even possible? Let's dig into the science here and unpack what's going on behind that shocking number. And look, this wasn't some tiny, questionable study. We're talking about data from a massive project that tracked a huge, representative group of American adults for almost 20 years. So when they find something, it has some serious weight behind it. So the researchers, they dug in and they found the culprit. It's a hormone, a molecule called IGF-1. That's short for insulin-like growth factor 1. And the connection was crystal clear. You eat a lot of animal protein, your IGF-1 levels go up. And it was those high IGF-1 levels that were driving the cancer risk.
All right, so what on earth is IGF-1? And why is a growth signal a bad thing when you're in your 50s? Let's break down the biology.
Okay, the easiest way to think about IGF-1 is that it's your body's main growth signal. It's the hormone that tells your cells, hey, it's time to grow, divide, and stick around. Now, when you're a kid or a teenager, that's exactly what you want, right? It's building your bones, your muscles, everything. But the problem starts when that signal gets stuck in the on position when you're an adult. You're not really supposed to be in major growth mode anymore.
I love this analogy because it makes it so clear. Imagine IGF-1 is like a construction crew building your body, which is the house. When you're young, you need that crew working around the clock. But what happens when the house is finished? If the crew just never leaves, they just keep hammering away, adding stuff you don't need, well, the house doesn't get better, it actually starts to get compromised. And that's exactly what happens with constantly high IGF-1. It tells damaged cells to stick around and multiply, when your body should really be cleaning them out. So what's keeping this construction crew on the job 24/7? Well, the main culprit in our diet is animal protein. And if you want to get specific, it's a particular amino acid called leucine. You find a ton of it in meat, dairy, and, yep, those popular whey protein shakes. You can basically think of leucine as sending a direct command to your liver, saying, crank up the IGF-1, and that keeps that growth signal stuck on.
And this really gets to the heart of the mistake. Let me be super clear. Protein is not the enemy. You absolutely need it to live. The problem is the pattern of how we eat it. When you're eating high-protein meals all day long, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, your body never gets a break. It never hits what you could call a hormonal low. And that downtime is absolutely critical for your body's own internal cancer surveillance team to do its job. Okay, but here is the really good news. This is completely fixable, and I want to show you a case study that really highlights just how powerful a few simple shifts can be.
So let me tell you about Carol. She's 58 years old, really health conscious. She works out, but she has a family history of breast cancer, which made her worried. She gets her labs done and her IGF-1 comes back at 268. That's really high, way into the risk zone. And when she looked at her diet, she realized she was eating a lot of protein at every single meal, sometimes up to 160 grams a day.
So she makes a few targeted changes, and just 6 months later, you gotta see these results. Her IGF-1, it drops from that scary 268 all the way down to 189. Her insulin levels, which were high, they went back to normal, and her inflammation marker, HSCRP, it just plummeted from 2.8 to 0.9. I mean, these aren't small tweaks, these are life-changing results.
So what was the secret? It was actually a really simple 3-step plan. First, she started pushing her breakfast back a bit, creating a 15 to 16-hour fasting window overnight. Simple enough. Second, she cut her total protein back to around 90 grams a day. And third, and this is key, she stopped spreading it out. She ate most of that protein later in the day in a more compressed window.
Okay, now I have to stop here because this next point is absolutely critical. What we've been talking about is not for everyone. The moment you cross that age 65 threshold, the rulebook basically gets thrown out the window. Yeah, you can really think of it as a tale of 2 decades. For that 50 to 65 age group, the name of the game is lowering IGF-1 to reduce cancer risk. But after 65, the script totally flips. The number one priority becomes fighting off age-related muscle loss, something called sarcopenia. See, your body just gets less efficient at using protein as you get older, so you actually need more of it to stay strong and independent. Getting too little protein after 65 is a whole different kind of danger.
And just a really important safety note here. If you have any history of kidney disease, if you're losing weight without trying to, if you're currently in active cancer treatment, or have a history with eating disorders, please do not try this on your own. You absolutely need to work with your doctor. These recommendations are really for otherwise healthy adults.
Okay, so with all that in mind, let's wrap this up and put it all together into a clear, actionable plan. All right, if you're in that 50 to 65 group, here's the number to remember. The research points to a target of about 0.8 to 1.0 grams of protein for every kilogram of your body weight. So, what does that mean in plain English? For someone who's, say, 170 pounds, that works out to be around 62 to 77 grams of protein a day. That seems to be the sweet spot, enough to keep your muscle, but not so much that you're cranking up that IGF-1 all day.
And remember, where you get your protein from matters a lot. That study specifically linked the risk to animal protein. Now, this doesn't mean you have to go full vegetarian tomorrow. It's really just about shifting the balance on your plate. Simple swaps, maybe trade some chicken for lentils, or instead of a whey shake, grab a handful of nuts. It makes a huge difference because those plant proteins just don't send that same powerful grow signal to your liver.
Yeah, this is a great way to picture it. It's not about being perfect or eliminating anything completely. It's just about rebalancing. If you can aim for a more even split between your animal proteins and different kinds of plant proteins, you're already helping to nudge that hormonal signal in a much healthier direction.
And finally, if you're serious about this, you can't just guess. You have to track it. So these are the key things to talk to your doctor about. You can ask for a fasting IGF-1 test. You can check your insulin and inflammation markers. And hey, if you're worried about losing muscle mass while you do this, a DEXA scan is the best way to keep an eye on it. This is how you really know if it's working. So I'll just leave you with this one question to chew on. After all of this, it really just boils down to one thing. Is your diet's growth signal working for you, or is it working against you? Because the amazing thing is, the power to change that signal, well, that's completely up to you.